get started. All right. Okay, we're going live. Yes, we are live. We're super excited. We're ready to rock, ready to kick ass. We've got people in two completely different parts of the world just on this call. Can't even imagine where other people are connecting in the live stream. I'm actually just gonna drop this right here real quick. Everyone can put where they're joining from. You said, Ole, that you're in Stockholm, and Brad, where are you located in New Zealand?
In Christchurch in the South Island.
Christchurch in the South Island. I'm going to make sure. Is there one in the North Island? Sorry, my New Zealand.
No. I just.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Good distinguishing. So, as I said, we're here for a CNCF student session, being under the banner of the Data on Kubernetes community. Really just excited to get this out in the open because this is a hot new project coming from Kubeshop. Coming live and direct from Stockholm, Sweden. We've got Ole.
Stockholm, Sweden.
What's up, Ole? How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. It's great to be here. Thanks, Bart. I'm trying to get over the fact that Brad is actually tomorrow. He's actually a day ahead of us. What can I ask him? That's going to give me some advantage today.
This was supposed to be a live stream about infrastructure and Kubernetes, but actually this is a Back to the Future webinar that we're surprising everybody with. Brad is probably sick and tired of hearing about this.
I'm sure it's just like another one of these guys.
Like I said, we got Ole in Stockholm, and Brad, you are a CNCF ambassador. What do you do in your day job? If you don't know Brad already in the CNCF ecosystem, you will know very quickly. He's super active. He's super generous with his time. He's doing mentoring. He's involved in all kinds of stuff. This isn't the first time we've been on a live stream together. But yeah, Brad, tell us a little bit more about what you do in your day-to-day.
Yeah, so in my day-to-day, I'm the head of cloud engineering. So generally working, GCP, AWS, Azure, and then also very active in Kubernetes as well. And then so lately I've been probably going to too many meetings than I would like to. So I have to, after work, I have to study a bit more, to keep technical as well. So I always like to stay technical. So you can find me working in the cloud in the day and then open source at nighttime.
Very, very good.
Awesome.
That being said, it's really cool as well too to be here with Ole, and big shout out to Dimitri for putting this all together, getting us all in touch. Is because Ole, you're part of Kubeshop, and Kubeshop is the first, as far as I know, the first and probably only 100% Kubernetes accelerator that's out there.
Well, we like to think so, at least. Definitely. So Kubeshop is just a thing that we started in May this year. As you said, like an open source accelerator for projects targeting Kubernetes space. We have 3 projects up and running now. We've built our team over the summer, and it's just a fantastic journey to be on, to be building stuff from scratch. And, it's always a great experience.
Yep. Very, very good. Very exciting to see that this arrival. And so I imagine that we're all going to be hearing a lot more about Kubeshop because, like I said, I have yet to hear of anything similar. So very, very well done on your part to put this together. But now that being said, folks, as a reminder, you can feel free to leave your comments, questions in the chat. We will get to them accordingly during the conversation. If not, we can definitely continue the conversation in Slack. So like I said, just know that we're all open, accessible, easy to find. CNCF Slack, Data on Kubernetes Slack. I'm sure Kubeshop's got a Slack too. Brad, you're probably in about 15 different Slacks. We're all probably in too many notifications. That being said, Ole, if you just want to take it away, walk us through what we're going to see today. Got a little bit of a presentation, but mostly focusing on a demo.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Let me just start by sharing something here.
Okay.
Can you see this now?
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, there you go. Great. Yeah, so just a couple of slides it'll be mostly demo, but slides are slides, and you have to have some slides at least. So just to frame the demo. So Monokle is one of our projects, and it's a project, an open source project. You can find it on GitHub, right? Just like any other open source project, and you can download releases, and there's documentation and everything like that. And Monokle is a tool that kind of aims to make working with manifests a little bit easier. Because when I started with Kubernetes, one of my big challenges was just getting my head around manifests. I would clone like a project like Argo CD, Argo rollouts, or telepresence or something else. And there was this folder with all these manifests, and it was customized, and there was all these objects, and they were all related to each other. And I was like, what is going on here? And I didn't really get it. And and it was really hard to visualize how those things fit together. If I made changes, how can I make sure I didn't break things and all that kind of stuff? And so we're trying to build a tool that really helps you with tasks around workflows around manifests, right? So which is something that I think most people developers at least working with Kubernetes or targeting Kubernetes are tasked with in their day-to-day jobs when they build applications.
And just quickly on that, Brad, can you verify that? I mean, would you definitely agree that something that's going to make these processes smoother for developers, for folks that are getting into Kubernetes? I don't think anyone's saying we should make Kubernetes harder, right?
I hope not. Yeah, I've been checking this tool out, and I really like it because not only can you use it, as a junior developer, but I have a friend that's very senior that he can use some of this great stuff. Like, I love how you can point it to your cluster and bring those manifests back into your workspace. So, things, especially when you're in the dev stage, when you're testing out, you're doing things here, you're doing things there, and to get that diff is really valuable because you're going to spend a lot of time in the cluster getting it working to start with, and you're like, oh, what did I do to make that change that it works? So that was the real standout that I seen with this tool, and yeah, as we learn, we learn manifest, and we have to learn Helm, then we learn customize, and then it can get overwhelming fast. But the middle tab where you can see all of this just in really simple steps of this is what I have, this deployment, it links to here. It's really good.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, thanks. Appreciate that, and that's great feedback. And I hope to show, put some visuals on that through the demo. So just to kind of the question we often get, so how does this fit in? Because there are a lot of tools out there, right? So, and we see it kind of being a little bit in the middle, right? So you'd be using your favorite code editor like Visual Studio Code or WebStorm or whatever to manage to maybe today to author, you write YAMLs basically, and then for your cluster you'd be using something like Lens or some other dashboard tool to look at your cluster and do things with your cluster. But Monokle tries to find that middle ground where you're doing things that kind of touch on both sides and try to really give you a holistic view of those workflows and actions, and not require you maybe to be have like a YAML knowledge and have a deep code editing knowledge. Some of the features that we have, you could get through plugins in your IDEs, but those plugins are, could be quite a lot of them, and they're maybe not always in sync. So we want to try to fill that middle ground. So it's definitely not a tool to replace your IDE or to replace your cluster dashboard tool, whatever, but it's a tool to go alongside those and just help you be more productive and hopefully successful when you're building your applications. And without much ado, I'm just going to jump over to a demo. Any more thoughts or questions on that?
I think we're ready. Let's do it. It's demo time.
Let's do it.
It's demo time. Okay, so what can go wrong? Here we go. Okay, so you're going to have to let me know if this is visible. So this is just the basic screen when you start Monokle. It's it's a pretty traditional tool. You have these three panels or panes. In the middle is what we call the resource navigator. This is where you'll work with all the resources that you discover when you work. To the right, there's some editors. To the left, there's two tabs or panels for either file or cluster exploration. There's some buttons at the top. There's some preferences. You can configure links to Discord and stuff like that. It's a pretty straightforward tool, right? So usually the first thing you do is browse a folder that contains a project with manifests. And I'm going to start with a really simple project. This project just contains it's a small proxy for Kubernetes. And it just contains one deployment file that defines two resources. So immediately you'll see the resources that Monokle found here in the middle. So there's one deployment, and I have that here to the right, and there's one service. You can see there's also one file. Both of these are in the same file. So you can see that when as I click, or if I click the file, you kind of see that the relationships are highlighted. You'll see in a future example how this will be helpful if you have a lot of files and a lot of resources to help you kind of make the connection between resources and files themselves. This is just to give you a really simple example. You'll also see that Monokle displays links. So there's a link between the service and the deployment, and it's also highlighted in the editor. Monokle will validate these links immediately. So if I make a change here, you'll see now that that link is broken. So this is a great way to immediately validate that if you have, if you have references between your manifests, that you can make sure that they're all valid. So once again, if you're loading a big folder with lots of manifests, you'll immediately see there's a yellow error icon indicator at the top. You'll immediately get a list of all the broken links and all the validation errors in all your manifests. So it's a really quick way of just validating that all the ends seem to meet up, right? And obviously I can make this change, just change this back. And then
that's actually really powerful for troubleshooting, because I can't remember how much time I've spent if you have a spelling mistake in your selector, and you have to troubleshoot from the top or the bottom, and this would be this would save me a lot of time, I think.
Yeah, and
when you're developing.
Yeah, and we've had this. I mean, we've used it internally for our other projects, and especially if you're working with a Helm, which I'll show later on, and you kind of have a Helm chart, and then you Monokle allows you to kind of preview all the resources generated by a Helm chart, and then in those validate all the links. And it's really easy to author those help charts and then forget to change some name. And so if you do that preview, then you immediately see, oh, there's one role referring to some other service account or whatever. I forgot to fix the name. So this visual kind of feedback of immediately just getting a validation of that things seem to end up is really helpful, and it's like a safety net. So this is a super simplistic example, and just wanted to kind of introduce the basic concepts. Obviously, you can edit here. There's this context sensitive help for the different resources, and you can click your way to Kubernetes documentation and a bunch of other things. So to kind of take this to the next level, I'm going to select a different project, and now I'm going to look at the manifests from Argo rollouts, which is a nice project that you're probably familiar with from the CNCF. So Argo rollouts is a much bigger beast. So you can see here, this is just a folder containing all their manifest files. And in the middle here, you'll see all the manifests that Monokle discovered in those files. So once again, I can click on this deployment. I'll immediately see which file that deployment is defined in. I'll also get highlights on other objects that this deployment is related to. So there's a link here going to a service account. Here's the link, and I can click on that link. It'll actually take me to that service account. So I can easily kind of navigate to different, around the hierarchy or the tree, I guess you could say, of objects and how they're connected, and quickly get an understanding of how they're all related to each other. And once again, also I can, if I have a folder here, what's actually defined in this file here or in this file here, I can click here, and you'll see that it'll automatically highlight the corresponding objects in the navigator to help you. Once again, as this was something I was really struggling with when I was using Argo rollouts and trying to understand the manifest. What is this? What objects are actually in this file, or the other way around? If I was looking at an object, where is it actually defined? So, giving you that two-way navigation and the possibility to follow these links and validate. And fortunately, here there are no errors, so everything's all good. One thing you'll notice here that Argo rollouts uses Kustomize, and so there's. Monokle will detect these customizations for you. So you can see them here at the top. I can click on them, and it'll also identify patch resources. So these are resources that are patches that are used by Kustomize to patch your resources when Kustomize does its thing, right? And one thing what you can do now in Monokle is that you can actually preview a customization. So if I take this namespace install customization here and click preview, so now Monokle is running Kustomize, and now shows me the resources that were generated by Kustomize. So it's basic without having to, this was all done virtually in the background. So now I can basically look at, okay, these were the things that were generated by Kustomize. This all looks good. Maybe I want to preview this CRD. Oops, sorry, wrong one. So this is the customization that generates the CRDs for Argo rollouts. So it's a really powerful way for me to kind of, if I have Kustomize and I want to see what resources would actually be generated if I run this installation. And of course, you can also, let's do this one again. One thing where this would be helpful, right, is you want to see if I make changes to my customization, what effect is that going to have on my resources? I'm just going to do super simple example. So here you see this customization is setting the tag for an image. That image is being used right here, right? So let's go up there and change that tag to latest test, and then just reload. And then if I go back here, you'll see that now the tag has been updated. So it's basically a very simplistic example, because doing more targeted stuff for Kustomize takes more time, but this is a great way if you're like authoring your customizations. You can just make changes to them, just reload, see what comes out. Oh, this wasn't really what I hoped for. Go back, make some more changes. So it gives you that really iterative workflow around with Kustomize, and as we'll see with Helm also a little bit later on. So that's super powerful. Another thing, one of the things we really set out actually initially is to target Monokle at users that don't like YAML. Believe it or not, there are quite many out there. And we haven't come that far in that direction. But the idea is to provide form editors for all the resource kinds that Kubernetes supports, right? So if you don't like YAML or you don't want to use YAML, there's a form editor. There should be a form editor for you that you can use. And currently we only have it for config maps, just as a kind of proof of concept that we can do it. But form editors are great in a couple of ways. One is obviously that you don't have to mess with YAML, right? So if I write something here, I can just go back. You'll see that this is automatically updated, or it's a two-way kind of two-way thing for making changes, or if I want to add a value to my config map, you'll see that the value gets added here back and forth. So one way is that obviously I didn't have to mess with the YAML. The other way is it's a nice way of discovering what I can actually put in my config map. So before I had this editor, I didn't know there was an immutable setting for config maps, or I didn't know that I could actually set cluster names and different things. So it's also a tool that actually helps me understand some of the possibilities with Kubernetes, well, with config maps. So I'm an expert at config maps now. Maybe not that helpful, but as we build this out and support like deployments and services and ingress controllers or what you have, what have not. I think this could be a great way. Not just to help make sure that you're writing the right YAML, but also to help you, discover all the possibilities of Kubernetes and what you can do.
Quick question. Since we're talking about, and I think this is a really nice topic. You're saying some of the folks in the I hate YAML camp, or however we want to refer to them. But just keeping that in mind, have you done like a side-by-side check? Do you have any metrics on regarding the optimization that Monokle is providing, where you could say historically X amount of time has been spent, we don't want to use the word wasted, but has been spent having to set up, these kind of processes, having to work with YAML, be it or other elements of Kubernetes. Do you have any direct info on that? Because I understand, time is money and that's very valuable.
No.
That's okay, but that could be a side project.
But that's it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great side project. I'm sure people at Kubeshop are taking notes.
No, because I'm also wondering then on the other side is that, Brad working in cloud management, is that when you're assessing a project and thinking, okay, I've got X amount of people, I've got X amount of resources, how can I give a realistic estimation knowing all the configurations are going to have to go in place? Depending on the level that somebody's at, all the things that go in there. Brad, on your side, when you're looking at a project, how do you approach that and thinking about if someone says, hey, you're all the time that was spent previously on something, we're going to remove that and make this more, you can say, junior friendly or an easier entry level?
Yeah, I think particularly what people don't know about open source and Kubernetes is that the developers are very expensive. So if you have, let's say, 5 developers and they're, it's so easy to make a small mistake in manifest. Like I've done it many times. I've wasted so much, hours of my life myself even. So if you could have a tool like that, like this, that would catch those silly errors before they happen, which can potentially take, 3 hours to solve, or even yet, a production issue that your clients can't access your site. I think that alone would save actually thousands and thousands of dollars. So
yeah. I mean, to your point, it's usually the smaller the error, the longer time it'll take to find and fix, right? So it's just a spelling mistake or there's an S too much, and that can take really long time to figure out kind of why is things going wrong. And the error messages you get from Kubernetes logs aren't always the most helpful in those in those cases. So definitely.
But I think that's what's so brilliant about the simplicity, but then the gift that Monokle is delivering is that it sounds really silly to say this, but it's like, if only there was a Kubernetes spell checker, and it's like, well, we got one. Because like you said, is that to be scanning through and looking for that extra S, that's the time, and also the frustration at a mistake of that nature. I think at a human level is makes your blood boil. Anyway, continue.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I just want to say also, it really shows back the slide that you showed before, where you have, Monokle in the middle and your dev and your ops, and when you are, you're in the planning stage, and the time that you spend the most is actually in the middle, where it's nice to say that, okay, we're going to make all of these manifests and deployments, and then we're going to put them into production. But what people don't realize is all the pain in the middle of actually making these and getting them working. So it's a nice slide. I can see how that sort of fits together now.
Yeah, great. Well, definitely. And those are, I think, workflows that I've been struggling with myself, right? So in that middle ground is just to get things working, and then ironing out the wrinkles. And once again, so this hopefully will help you. Okay, great. So I'm going to jump over to another little. We're going to get back to this, but I wanted to look at the cluster integration. So we've been looking at files now, resource files that you have, or manifests that you have in your file system and whatever. But Monokle can also talk to your cluster, right? So you can point it at a kubeconfig, and it'll find all the context in there. And then what you can do is just do show cluster resources, and now it's just going to populate this navigator in the middle with all the resources that it found in my local Minikube cluster, which is basically empty. It's just a vanilla install, but it's quite a lot in there, even if it's just an empty install. So once again here, you see that it is a lot of objects. I can look at them. I can follow links as I did before. I can actually see that there's an error here. So this endpoint is referring to a service which doesn't exist. So that's actually helpful. I don't know why that's the case. Maybe Monokle is doing something wrong here in the validation, but it could be that there's actually service missing in the cluster, which might be okay. And sometimes these validation errors are expected, and it's obviously hard for Monokle to know which is the case. But even here in this case, it's pretty helpful to just get a simple overview of what's in your cluster and be able to do that. And you can actually, you can make a change here. I'm going to show this a little later on, but if I make a change, let's see if I have something that I can reliably change now. But I can make changes here and then just immediately deploy them back. So you can actually use this as a hotfix tool. Not that you should be doing that, and I know it's a bad practice, but we've all been there where, whoops, I got the port wrong on my service. You can just connect to your cluster, find the service, change the port, and then just press deploy, and it'll update the cluster for you, and you're good to go, right? So I'm sure you can do that with other tools as well, but just as a kind of quick and dirty kind of fix. I want to show you a little bit more elaborate cluster I have running on Google Cloud. This is going to take a little.
I think I would be more confident to do the fix in here, because if you go inside the cluster, then you can't see how the whole sort of landscape works of it. So at least it lints it for you, and you could be a bit more safe.
Yeah, that's true. So this is a GKey cluster. It has 882 resources. So there's a bunch of vanilla resources, but I wanted to show you is that Monokle will also show you resources that are, not just standard Kubernetes resources. Obviously, Monokle doesn't know that much about them, so it won't be able to kind of maybe provide you with all the context-sensitive validation and all that stuff, but it'll still kind of allow you to, look at the YAML and make updates, etc. One thing when you look at a cluster like this is that you probably want to do some filtering, right? So maybe I just want to see the Argo CD namespace. Let's start there, right? So now I can see all the objects in the Argo CD namespace. Maybe I want to see all objects that have the name Redis in it, because I know there are some. So these are all the objects named are related to Redis in the Argo CD namespace, right? So there's definitely ways here where I can drill down. Let's remove this one. Or if I want to, look at an annotation, let's say I want to, I don't know, these are all the annotations that we found. Let's do a label instead. That's probably better. name, and then you can kind of select one of the existing names on the rollouts. Didn't find much there. It's probably because I did some mistake. Anyway, so, but you get the idea that you can use this for filtering out which resources you're looking at, because if you're looking at a cluster, this was 882 resources. I'm sure people have clusters with thousands and thousands of resources. So having some way to quickly filter out and narrowing down just the resources that you want to look at, I think is obviously going to be helpful. So now we're gonna jump back to looking at files and look a little bit at the features that where you can, that middle ground basically that I was talking about earlier. So and then now we're gonna actually look at Argo CD, which I have here. So here we go. So let's clear the filter. So these are this is Argo CD. Once again, even more resources, and you can see lots and lots of customizations. So I'm going to look at the core install one here, and I'm going to preview that. So this is the customization preview of the core install. And now I'm going to do what we call a cluster compare. So cluster compare is a feature that will basically compare your local resources to the resources, the ones in your cluster, and provide you kind of with a high-level diff. And it'll take a little while because I'm connected to this cluster on Google Cloud. So what you'll see now here is to the left are all the local resources, and to the right you'll see which of those that actually exist in my cluster. And for those that do exist in my cluster, I can do immediately just a diff, hopefully. Here, so I can kind of diff these against each other, and I can see the differences. Or I can, if I want, I can select multiple of these and deploy them, or I can, deploy all of them at once. So I can do a bunch of things. But the idea here is, let's say I'm updating, I've made some changes to my customizations. I want to deploy this into my cluster, but I want to make sure, just want to have a look at what's going to happen. What's the difference between my local files and what's already running in my cluster? So this is a super powerful way to do that, because I don't have to diff one file or resource at a time. I can get a high level overview once again, my local resources versus the stuff that's in my cluster. And the same functionality applies to Helm charts. I'll show that later, or just vanilla manifests. So one thing that you'll notice here is that my local resources are all in the default namespace, and Argo, if you remember, was actually running in the Argo CD namespace. So obviously this diff isn't that great. So let's close this and go back, and we're going to add a namespace override Argo CD. Oops. There we go. And let's just reload the preview. So we're regenerating our customization. If we look at one of these, you'll see now that it has the Argo CD namespace. And let's just redo that cluster compare. So now the resources I have locally have the right namespace. And so now we're going to be able to see so now suddenly you'll see actually there's a good match with the resources I have in my cluster, and I can actually diff each of the one individually. And once again, if I wanted to deploy them all, or just deploy one or two of them, I can do that. And also with something that might be hard, let's say you're running customization, you generate all these resources, but actually I only wanted to update these two deployments or these role bindings or whatever. So you can super easily do that here instead of having to kind of manually extract those from the YAML that Kustomize generates and then apply those separately. So there's a bunch of workflows that you can achieve through this UI that are just much easier to do it this way. I'm not going to apply this because then our CI/CD person at Kubeshop is going to get really angry with me because he doesn't want me to reconfigure Argo CD like that. But so this was kind of to show you cluster compare, which I think is a super interesting functionality, and we have ideas on how to even make that more powerful. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to show, are we on time? Well, pretty good. I'm going to go back to that original project that I had. Let me see now. here we go. Sorry. So I had my deployment YAML. So this contains my two resources here, with the separator. They're both parsed out here in the middle. So what I wanted to show you is the basic functionality we have today for creating new resources, because that's kind of something we're missing, and that's one of the big things we want to focus on in the future. So there, if you notice, there's a small plus button up here, and here I can, let's create a config map, because that's everyone likes. There we go. So here's my config map. I can, once again, let's just add an item here, go back to the source, save that. Here we go. You can see the file showing up here to the left. Now I'm going to select my local Minikube cluster, and let's deploy that. So now I'm deploying my config map to the cluster. Let's just let that finish. There you go. And now I'm going to do a cluster compare. So what this basically does is, as before, takes my 3 local resources. Remember, I had a deployment, a service, and config map. I'm going to compare that to my local Minikube cluster, which didn't contain those first 2 because I hadn't deployed them. But as you remember, I did have the config map that I just recently deployed there, right? So once again, I can do a diff here, and you can see these are the same. And so so I guess what I was going to show, I can also do load cluster resources here. And we can find my config map here. There you go. I wanted to show new value. I'm going to change the value. Another value. I just wanted to show you kind of this feature that I talked about earlier. So now I'm making changes to the config map in my cluster. Just okay that. So now this has been deployed back to my cluster. So now let's go back. Let's exit cluster mode. Here's my config map, and then I'm going to diff it to my cluster. And as you can see now, the version that's in my cluster contains the value, and this is my local version. And so I hope that wasn't confusing. I felt it was a bit confusing, but what I wanted to show is I could create my resource, I could deploy it, I could then find it with the cluster view, I could change it in the cluster, and when I had done that, I could then see that change when I diffed my local resource back to the cluster. So kind of showing those workflows around creating new resources. And creating resources is, what we have here is pretty rudimentary, right? So you can create new resources. You can also clone existing resources, so that can kind of give you a head start. And for a config map, this is fine. But if you want to create like a service or a deployment or something much more elaborate, you're probably going to need some more help, especially if you're new, if you're like me. And I think that's one of the big directions we want to go down with this tool, is to provide you with like wizards and templates for individual resources, but kind of even applications in themselves. But actually, I'm actually done with the demo. So I don't know. So before I jump back to my slides, Brad, any questions or anything?
Yeah. So do you have on the roadmap Git integration? So where, I think one really cool thing that if you can do a diff from your cluster, put it back into your file system, and then you can push it back up to your Git repo.
Yeah. So that's a great question. So currently we're kind of delegating Git integration to, whatever the way you do it today with command line or, your IDE. And so kind of, you'd have to manage that outside of Monokle, but you're totally right. We could, and we've talked about this, basically, you could have a connect a Git repository or a Git account, and then you could scroll your repositories, select a repository. We'd clone that repository folder. You make changes. We could even, in a true GitOps kind of way, we could generate a pull request for you with the changes that you made. So really tying this into a GitOps workflow. And I think that would be super exciting. I guess one of the things with early stage projects that we're so keen on making our users happy, so that if a lot of people ask us for Git integration, that's going to be the top of our list for things to do, right? So great that you're mentioning that, and it's definitely on the roadmap. If you go to our GitHub issues and search for Git, you'll find issues related to that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's interesting you say GitOps, because that's what actually sparked my question. but I think it would be good for both beginners that don't really know Git, you know, that just want to push. And then if I was, let's say I have Argo CD, for example, and it's polling my source of truth, and then it's updating the cluster. If I turn my sync off, and then you know, this comes back to that piece in the middle again, and then I can fix my thing, you know, because the thing with GitOps, it's annoying that when you go to fix your problem and then your changes get overridden again with what's in Git. But if you can turn your sync off, fix it in Monokle, you know, have on your file system the source of truth, and you push that back, I think it will reconcile really nicely.
Yeah, well, that's a great idea. Yeah, that's great. And I think finding those workflows that, you know, make you feel productive or that make you productive is really important to us. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to jump back to my slides, or what's left of them. Okay, so recap. We looked at navigating resources, you know, both in cluster and file and all these links and all that stuff. We looked at validation, debugging of customizations. Oh, I forgot to show you Helm charts. I'll go back to that. And we looked at cluster interactions and creations. I'm sorry, that was clumsy of me. I'm sure someone at Kubeshop was like, what about Helm charts? Okay, so what I wanted to show you with Helm charts is this. So I have here a simple project with a bunch of Helm charts. And so what Monokle will allow you to do today is pretty basic when it comes to Helm, right? But what it allows you to do is that if you have a values file, if you're authoring in a Helm chart and you have a values file, you can basically do a preview of the resources generated by Helm for that values file. So I have here a Helm chart. It's somewhere down here. So here are all the templates and everything related to that. I'm just going to press the preview button. And as you can see now down here, these are all the objects that were generated by Helm when building that chart using the Helm, the values file that I clicked on. So these, as you can see them down here. And once again, I can do cluster compare, right? So I can compare these resources to my cluster. I can also make direct changes. So let's see, we had here values file. Let's change the replicas to 2 and reload that. So it'll basically run Helm again. And now we can go back here. You'll see that replicas is 2, right? Obviously, somewhat simplistic example, but I could definitely go in, maybe make some changes to my templates, or, you know, whatever changes I might want to do, just press the reload button and see what that effect has on the generated objects in the end. And from there, I can trigger into the other workflows related to comparing to your cluster and you know, applying and diffing and all that. So it's definitely, there's things we can get better at when it comes to Helm, but for now, if you want to debug a Helm chart today, or kind of debug the output of Helm chart, there aren't that many options, as far as I know, at least. You can basically run Helm in template mode or in install, but do a dry run, and then take those YAML files and try to validate them. And I mean, basically, that's what Monokle is doing here under the hood, is that it's running Helm template and then capturing that output and parsing it, and, you know, showing you all the errors and whatever else that you might have in the generated manifests or resources. So that was a quick detour on Helm. I'm sorry for forgetting that.
And what's your favorite, Kustomize or Helm?
Oh, it depends. Well, I've seen people. I guess I've seen projects using Helm to generate customizations. I think they both have their merits. I think Helm is great for packaging applications, right, and distributing them. Kustomize, it has other merits around being pure YAML and you know, maybe making it easier to work with in a more structured way. I think, I know, I'll be Swedish diplomatic and say both have pros and cons.
I actually discovered something probably 2 weeks ago, that you can actually run Helm inside Kustomize. So
oh, that's cool.
That was super powerful, because I had a requirement where, you know, you have your Helm chart that someone else has built, you need to add a few more things onto it, but you can actually have sort of Kustomize as the wrapper and the Helm chart in it, and then you can just add your extra sort of manifest files that you want. And I found that quite fascinating.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. It definitely, I mean, if it's a workflow that, people use, we should definitely support that. If you can run, customize, and if we can somehow help people, visualize the output of that, or help. So or the other way around, if you're doing Helm, which generates customizations, and then so you basically first run your Helm chart, and then you get customizations, and from there you want to preview those. We can. I mean, we have all the building blocks for these things, as you've seen in the UI. We just need to understand what workflows people are struggling with, and how we can put them together to help. But thanks again for sharing that. I mean, I love hearing what people are actually doing versus what we think people are doing. Okay, so what's next steps? I think so. There's a lot of stuff as we want to do. I think what the big one is around that we're currently kind of focused on is around helping people create applications and manifests. So both around templates. I know a lot of other tools have like snippets, which is maybe not super helpful. Let me rephrase that, which can be helpful in certain situations, but it doesn't always go the full way. Let's say I have a Docker image and I want to just package that with this, with the deployment and a service. We should have a wizard that does all that for you, right? Or if and that does some of the helps you create objects that are, that are related to what you want to do. So I think that's really high on our list. Also, as I showed you the form editor for config maps, we'd like to have that kind of form-based editing for all resources, wizards for Kustomize and Helm. So let's say I have vanilla resources. Now I want to turn this into a customized project. We can definitely, what overlays do you want? What values should we extract? Can we help you? And there's some really cool open source projects out there already that we can probably integrate for this and for many other things. I'll say that as a segue. There's so many cool projects out there for that we'd love to integrate for validation, for example. There's a bunch and other things. So we're definitely not trying to reinvent the wheel in the sense that if there's something out there that we can integrate and grab that, and if you see something that, hey, this would be cool if you could use it in Monokle to do this or that, let us know and we'll look at it. Plugins, the pipe dream of developers. We need every tool has a plugin framework, but we think that having the possibility to provide custom editors or actions. Let's say if you could provide actions for editors for Argo rollouts, or for Argo CD for deployments, or for whatever other some ingress controllers for traffic, or for Ambassador, or for you name it. If that would be a way to build out the ecosystem around Monokle, that would be nice. And there's so much more. So once again, if you go to GitHub and just look at issues and projects and stuff, you'll see kind of what we've been brainstorming. But I do want to take the opportunity to ask for help, because as I've said before, the input is super helpful, and we'd like really to know, so this is directed at the people watching this, like to understand your challenges around creating manifests and getting started with related workflows. So we'd love to kind of get a session together with our UX expert and us to kind of really understand and interview, do like a discovery session on how would you like to be able to create manifests, and what are the challenges, and if you're thinking of wizards or templates, what would be helpful. So I know it's a big ask, and I know everyone's busy with everything, but any kind of input here is super valuable for us. And if you join our Discord or email me or whatever, we'd be so thankful, and we'll hopefully make Monokle better. And I hope it's okay to ask for help like this.
No, it's totally fine to ask for help. Why wouldn't you? I mean, why wouldn't you? Like you're getting started. There's a lot of energy going into this. By the way, the interface is amazing. I love that. Like that always makes me excited, because visually speaking, it's very soft on the eyes, very really well set up and easy to follow along with. I'm sure we have people in our community that would like to have that experience, particularly for some of the younger folks, just to be thinking about this in a different way at an early age in their Kubernetes process. Brad knows that as well, because he interacts with a lot of the younger people in the CNCF. So I think that's a really nice idea. And like you said, that feedback's very valuable. One thing is what you're thinking over here. The other thing is the reality over there. We did get a nice comment though from Avinash in our chat right here. He said, just downloaded Monokle and loaded a sample project onto it. I've got 22 warnings and 1 error. Time to dig in. So the results speak for themselves. I mean, like we're not making this stuff up.
Okay,
I
that's
think
great.
I think that's really, like I said, I think it's the energy behind this is great for the ecosystem. The driving commitment to make things simpler as well, because that's why there's so much imposter syndrome around Kubernetes, that it's expected that you have to be an expert on everything. I was in a talk earlier today with some very interesting people, and they were talking with, enterprise level companies, but there were, I mean, if they were to watch this presentation, would be drowning. I mean, like, and so it's often easy to get kind of lost, or not lost, but just assume that everybody knows all this stuff, when in reality that's simply not the case. Everyone's at a different phase in their Kubernetes journey.
Yeah, and I, to be honest, I think most developers are pretty early on in that journey, or just have that journey ahead of them, right? So, and I think that's really where we're trying to focus now, is to help people that initial onboarding experience to Kubernetes and make that as smooth and productive as possible. Because I mean, I was in that situation myself where I was building microservices and we were happy with Docker, and the guys, we're going to do it Kubernetes, and you're like, oh, now I have to learn all these YAMLs and manifests, and what am I doing? And if we can, even if it's not that hard, once you know, and nothing's hard when you know how to do it, but if we can help people kind of get over that hurdle and feel that, oh, this is actually really easy, and help them iron out the wrinkles with some errors, I think that, mission successful on our end, and I think that's where we really want to focus. And obviously we're happy to cater to workflows for people who are GitOps experts and who've done this for years and dream in YAML, but and we want to make everyone happy, but we're kind of focusing on that. Our current focus is primarily on those who are relatively new to Kubernetes and struggling with challenges related to that.
And for those of you who are dreaming in YAML, mental health is a thing, and there are solutions for that too. So that can also talk to me. We'll get you the help that you need. Anyway, I think that's great points, and also excellent presentation skills. I really, really liked it. Brad, any feedback on your side about what you think the next steps that you would like to see happen with Monokle?
Yeah, I think one thing I'd like to point out as well is when I first kicked the tires of Monokle and I was looking what it is, I opened up a manifest files that I've already done. So I think any advice to starting out is do one from scratch to see the real beauty of it. Because if you have something that's, really, that's already done and you're finished, then you can't see all these great validation and linters and stuff. So yeah, my suggestion to people trying it out would be do something from scratch and build something up to see the real value of it. But yeah, I think like we talked about today, the Git integration would be cool from my side. And I think it's a great tool, and it really does. I like the focus area that you have, because if you look at the CNCF reports about, from last year, people adopting Kubernetes, and the massive percentage, I think it's like 300% increase in adoption. Those people need to learn too. So I think it's a great focus point where you're going at.
Great. Well, thank you. I so much appreciate that, and the opportunity to present here. So thank you so much. Oh, you're muted, Bart.
I'm muted. That's the last thing anybody wants. Anyway, Ole, thank you so much for your time. This is the first and certainly not the last time we're going to be interacting. Great to see this stuff that's going on with Kubeshop. Big shout out to Dimitri as well for all the work he's put in there. Kelly, all the folks on the Kubeshop team. We'll be seeing more of you. I've seen that you got some other webinars coming up soon too, with some great folks in the CNCF ecosystem. So it's good that the word is going to be moving around. You can count on Brad and I to be letting folks know as well too. That being said, already getting some great feedback as well too in the YouTube chat. So looking to see those conversations go forward. Let's get some of those UX meetings set up and see what happens from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Take care, and thanks
care.
everyone.
Have a good one.